Give that
Here
wonderful
is
speech.
Ms. Trump. Okay. Which one?
The abbreviated version.
Yeah, go whatever the shorter is.
Good night.
Good evening. It's 7 p.m. This is the work session of the mayor and the council. We have a call to order. Could we please stand for a few moments of silent reflection? Could I ask Councilwoman-elect Ellen Bastides lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
New Jersey's Open Public Meeting and River Edge Mission Statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and attend any meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with this act, the mayor and council of the Borough of River Edge have caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Borough Hall, and notices have been sent to the Record and the Ridgewood News. The mission of this governing body is to provide essential services through the establishment and implementation of public policy that will safeguard our infrastructure, provide honest, courteous, and professional services, and establish a sense of trust and accomplishment with our residents. Through research and prudent planning, we seek to minimize risks while improving our services. We are sensitive to the needs of our taxpayers while realizing that this governing body cannot be all things to all people within the revenue constraints imposed by state mandates, economic conditions, and prevailing attitudes about taxation. This meeting is being recorded both audio and video. Anyone who wishes to be heard when we are open to public comment is invited to come forth, say their name, their address. If they wish to be, their image wish to be recorded, they need to come within the confines of the council area. There is an exit to my left, to my right, and in front of me. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Here.
Councilman Freda?
Present.
Councilman Capola?
Here.
Councilman McMillan?
Here.
Councilman Bartoloni?
I am here.
Councilman Papaleo?
Here.
And Mayor Mastrocola.
All right, the first thing on our agenda is Borough Administrator's topics. Alan, I believe the Special Improvement District presentation by Don Smart and Mark Gordon. Do you wish to wait a few minutes, or what is your thoughts?
Actually, I'd like to start with Judge Safro, please.
Excellent.
He's in the audience, and I think we should hear his report first.
Thank you, Judge Safro, for coming tonight.
Thank you for having us. What I find to be interesting is that a few months ago, actually quite a few months ago, the mayor called me and asked me if I would come and appear before you. So I'm here. He's not, but
I'm sure he'll be here any moment.
Here they come.
Here comes our borough attorney and our mayor. So we'll just take a moment. Would the record please reflect that our borough attorney is now with us and that the mayor is now present?
I had the right date.
It's so good of you to join us.
Hey.
Council.
You guys. Thank you, Council President. You're welcome, Mayor.
You did the
Yes.
Open Public Meetings Act?
Mhm.
Yes, beautiful. Figured we'd warm up the chair, get things going. Okay, we have Judge Safro. Welcome.
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can begin your presentation.
Yes, actually, the mayor had asked me if I would come and speak to you, to some extent, just so you could see who I am. And I thought it was a very good idea, even though I had been very involved in town government and in town for a long time. In the past 10 years, really, since I've been judge, I've had to distance myself from many different types of town functions And one consequence of that is I don't get to meet as many people except in one particular room in the other building as I used to. My children are grown up. Well, first of all, I've lived in town for about 35 years. So my children went through the school system, and I was very involved then. But now that they're grown up and they're out, I'm not as involved in many of the types of functions that I used to be. So it seemed like a very good idea to me, and I do think it was a very good idea that the mayor asked me to come to at least see who this guy is, who is your judge, who this person is, who is your judge. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you have about me and the court system. And I would like to spend a couple of minutes talking about what the court really does, because I don't know how familiar you all are with that either. The municipal court handles a variety of different kinds of cases. We deal with the typical traffic type case, careless driving, somebody runs a stop sign. We deal with parking cases. We also deal with drunk driving, driving under the influence, those cases. We deal with criminal cases. They are disorderly persons cases. In other words, people who've been charged with committing what we in New Jersey call an offense as compared with, let's say, what New York would call a misdemeanor. People who can go to jail for up to 6 months because of the particular offense as opposed to a more serious crime. We deal with different types of borough ordinance violations. And those are all the types of cases that are typically dealt with on a court night. There are other types of situations that I, as the municipal court judge, and Noreen, as the court administrator, get involved in. For me, it's the types of situations I get involved outside of court include domestic violence cases, primarily domestic violence cases, and also if I have to come in to arraign somebody. If someone's been arrested or charged with a crime, I have to come in within a certain number of hours and typically make sure that person knows his or her rights, make sure that person knows what the charge is against him or her. And that can happen at any time between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 9 o'clock in the morning. And the same thing with the domestic violence cases. And in River Edge, although I used to think that we were insulated or secured from a lot of the types of things that I would think would occur in bigger municipalities or cities, it's not quite as true anymore as that used to be. We have, for instance, had carjacking, we had attempted murder at one point, but we seem to have more of the types of criminal offenses that require that result in people being charged with serious or more serious crimes. In preparation for coming here, I just took a look at my log of domestic violence cases, and when I started as judge in 2004, I came in the first year 4 times for domestic violence cases. That ran pretty much through 2004, 2005, 2006. Now, this year, I've come in 8 times this year for domestic violence cases. It doesn't sound like a lot, and thank God it's not a lot, but it's double what it used to be. And I think that's also true for crimes occurring that one way or another involve River Edge, that there's more of that type of activity. Maybe it's a consequence of it's always a consequence of Route 4 and Kindercamack Road, related to those major arteries running next to and through town. But we are not, there's no wall around the town, the borough, that insulates us from those types of activities. And the same can be said about the drunk driving cases. We deal with, on average, approximately, I would say, 25 to 30 drunk driving cases a year. This year, through October, we had 20. And so we will probably far surpass the typical number of drunk driving cases that are dealt with. And so far, I think our court has been able to deal with all the different kinds of cases that we have to deal with, and the increase in the number of certain types of cases, like the drunk driving cases, because of the way our court system functions in town. We have court the first 4 Tuesdays of each month. That allows us to have a special session if I need to deal with something like a drunk driving case or a more serious type of case, or a different type of serious case that requires more time. There's another category of case that I want to talk about for a moment, and those are the cases that are brought by citizens against each other. And people absolutely have the right as citizens to bring charges for disorderly persons offense or even a motor vehicle violation against each other. We seem to have more of those than we used to, and some of the cases that are now before us are very complex cases. We actually have a case now involving an estate, and I will hear testimony from, I think, 11 or 12 witnesses, including doctors, lawyers, other people. I have to have special sessions for those cases. And we can do that usually by using the 5th Tuesday of the month, but sometimes I'll come in and I'll have court on another. For instance, with this estate case, I'll have court start, I think, twice on a Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock, and I'll just have the session. And having the room there, having the courtroom separate from the council chamber is very helpful for that. We have to have it anyway, I know, but we don't have to have it. It's good that we have it anyway, but it's very helpful in helping us to deal with the different types of cases and the cases that require more than the typical court night. Within the borough ordinance type of case, we have one type that I pay more attention to than the others, or that I am more concerned about than the others, and those are the cases in which people who are underage have been charged with possession or consumption of alcoholic beverages within town. And even though, well, not even though, when I deal with a case, the first focus has to be whether the prosecution is going to prove the case. In other words, I am concerned with making sure that people who are underage, that parties don't get out of hand, that people don't get hurt, that the police have the authority to do what they have to do to protect everyone. But when a case comes before me, my first focus is whether there actually is a charge that is going to be proven against the person who's the defendant. And if that charge is not proven, then the case gets dismissed. But if the charge is proven, then I do use the ordinance that the town has in an effort to try to make sure that people who are underage understand the risks involved in underage drinking, particularly at parties where things get out of hand. And what I've tried to do, rather than just punishing people, is to force them to experience, even secondhand, the effect of people getting drunk and drinking to beyond excess, drinking dangerous quantities of alcoholic beverages. And one of the things that I've done is I've had people become reporters and go to the grove that's along the park, along Howland Avenue, and pick a name from a tree in the grove and try to write, in essence, a newspaper story about what happened to the person who died, for whom that tree has been planted in memoriam. And I do understand that sometimes the people who write these articles for me or these stories for me don't really take it as seriously as maybe they could have. But some of the people young people who have done that have written very touching articles or essays, and hopefully they've learned something that just finding someone guilty and finding somebody wouldn't teach them. And that's the one area, well, that is one of the few areas in which I can try to do something like that. And I think, having lived here for a long time, having had children who've gone through the school system here, having had children who have gone to parties like that here, and having dealt with it as a parent, has helped me to get that perspective on that particular type of case. And I really think, I've always felt that it's really been an honor for me to be able to serve as a judge in my town, and I've always appreciated the opportunity of being able to do that. And that's really what I wanted to tell you. So I wanted to thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Judge. This council, we would never second-guess you on any individual decision, but we do have the budget process, and one of the things we go over is the court's budget. So if you could briefly touch on the volume of your cases, whether it's increased or decreased, is your court staffing adequate or inadequate, are your security measures up to the proper standards? As far as your collections, do you have a huge balance? Because some towns are contracting with outside collection agencies for their court collections. We'd like your opinion on that. So if you could maybe touch on some of those issues.
Sure. Well, let me talk about security first. I think our security is adequate to better than adequate. It's not as good as it could possibly be, partly because the solution, or what would have to be done to make the security as good as it could possibly be, may be impractical. We now have the electronic device that people have to pass through. We have 2 officers at the beginning of the court session manning the entrance, and we always have at least 1 armed police officer in or just outside of the courtroom. The way our court sessions are manned by the police department is also helpful. Because we have court sessions that are synchronized to when the police are on duty, not only are they available when we need them for a trial, but they are in and out of court all the time. And Lieutenant Walker is at each court session, and like I said before, there's a police officer who's stationed at the door into the courtroom itself, and then there is typically 1 other officer who has to be in court anyway. And that's all in addition to the court officer, who's an unarmed person who's really there just to make sure that people stay quiet and helps me to keep the proper sense of decorum and order in the room. So I believe that our security is at least, if not better than, sufficient. Sure.
Okay. Also, for the security, different from other courts, we do have a separate entrance. The judge and the court staff do come through the police department, down the back, outside of the public. We're not walking, when court starts, we're not walking through the general public to get on the bench. We take a separate entrance. That includes also if prisoners are being brought down, that area in the hallway that the prisoners are brought down are cleared. That's really the only issue that there is that since our prosecutor uses the rec office as the temporary prosecutor's office, the people who seek to talk to the prosecutor are lined up down that hallway. And only a few, 10 people may fit in that hallway, so it kind of goes in sections. Like the court officer will say, okay, this group of people can go there. But it's pretty well secured, especially if a prisoner is brought down. The front area of the courtroom is cleared out from anybody. The prisoners, if there's more than 1, they will sit there in the front entrance, and they're immediately in and out. They don't hang around in the courtroom. The officers bring them down, they're arraigned, or for whatever issue they're here, then they're immediately brought back upstairs into the holding cell. Also within the courtroom, we have 4 key lights, so somebody who walks into the courtroom can't walk by and just shut the lights off. There is a 4th key that turns the light switches on and off. All the chairs like these are connected together, so an individual can't get, angry, lift up one of the chairs and throw it at the bench.
Okay. So I think the security is really, it's more than sufficient. To make it perfect, we'd have to redesign the building. So I think that that I feel, when I come into courtroom, I feel secure. I think that
Oh, yeah.
court staff feels
Mhm.
secure also. In terms of the staffing, I think that we have enough staffing. I don't think we can lose anybody, though. We have to have, and we need Noreen. We have to have deputy court clerk as well, or court clerk as well, and we have a court officer. So I think that given the demands that are placed upon even a municipal court, we need the people that we have. And some of the demands are not related to the number of cases that we have to deal with. Some of the demands are related to requirements that the state imposes, whether it's the administrative office of the courts or other state entities impose on even a municipal court. There's more paperwork that has to be done now. More computer reports have to be filed. There's no such thing as handling a case, writing on the back of the ticket whatever the conclusion is, and putting it in a file, and that's the end of it. You have to log everything into the computer system, but that's not even the end of it. So it seems like the more paperless we become, the more paper we generate, and the more need there is for clerical work.
Yeah, but in the marriage license, not UCDR.
I just conducted two weddings, and before we had the new system come into effect, I would sign the license one time. Now we have a new computer-directed system that requires me to sign 4 copies of the license. We used to have a criminal complaint form
Right.
that I would sign one time. Now we have a new computer-directed complaint system, and I have to sign the complaint 7 times. So those are just examples of the kinds of things that happen. I think as the state slowly evolves from what we used to consider the paper system to what will ultimately be a paperless system, I think these are just steps along the way. But right now, there is more clerical work than there was before. So we definitely need both Noreen and the deputy court administrator or court clerk, her designation. In terms of the number of cases, I would have to say that actually there has been a decline over the years in the motor vehicle cases, the typical motor vehicle case, and that seems to ebb and flow. In 2004, we handled approximately 2,300 just typical motor vehicle cases, careless driving, those types of cases. In 2012, we handled about 1,200 of those cases. So there was a big difference when I looked at the 2 years. I think that is primarily related to, not to what we do, it's the number of tickets that are written by the police department. And I've seen over the years, I didn't actually realize, but when I prepared to come here, I saw that there have been peaks and valleys to that. I noticed that we have some younger police
You mean our
officers.
quota system is not working? Chief?
No. But I noticed that we have some younger police officers now, and they are getting very busy. They wrote how many drunk driving tickets last week?
8 this month so far.
Yeah. So remember, we used to have about 25 a year, so they've written 8 this month. And they should be. I'm glad they're writing the tickets. If they should be writing the tickets, I'll decide whether the tickets result in convictions. But I'm glad to see that they're out trying to enforce the laws that should be enforced. And I think that the number of typical motor vehicle cases that we'll have to deal with in municipal court will also rise. And I think that's the part of the cycle that we're in now. We typically handle approximately 80 to 85 criminal complaints a year, disorderly persons a year complaints. This year, we'll probably handle more than that. I think it was through September we had 66, so it looks like we'll probably be closer to 100 of those cases. And typically handle about 50 borough ordinance cases during the course of the year. And I think we'll also have more than that more cases than that this year.
You may notice an increase since we hired a code enforcement officer, and we're giving him more hours to deal with many properties in town that are in foreclosure and not being properly maintained. So you may notice an uptick in code enforcement.
Okay.
Yes, he has been
Yeah.
by the office.
And also, one thing I forgot to mention, we have a public defender, and I have to decide whether people are entitled to have a public defender represent them. There are two general criteria. One is whether the person can afford to hire a lawyer by himself or herself, and there are state and federal guidelines that apply to that part of the decision. The other criterion is the seriousness of the penalties that would apply to the violation. And if the person could go to jail, if the person could lose his or her license, if the person could have to pay $750 or more in fines, then the person, if that person can't afford to hire a lawyer, would be entitled to the public defender. I wasn't able to figure out how many cases a year we assign to the public defender, but I am allowed to require that people pay what's called the public defender application fee, which can't be more than $225. And I do evaluate those applications. There are people who really just can't afford to pay anything, and there are people who definitely can afford to pay the $225. And I do impose that fee when I think it's appropriate. And if you were to look at the line item from year to year, you'll see that there is money that is generated because of that. And I think that's a fair part of the statutory system, to allow people the opportunity to have a public defender represent them, and when appropriate, to contribute something toward the cost of that. And I do try to be mindful both of the need that the borough has and also the need that the individual defendant has for legal services, and if necessary, legal services without any payment at all. But I try to be sensitive to both sides of that. Noreen is better able to talk about the budget than I am, and I'm glad that she's here to help with that. So I'm going to let her speak to a little bit about the budget.
Right. The budget, the office works very well within it. I know there are certain, if you divide it as we do into the line items, this year there are certain line items that I am over, but the whole budget I am still, I haven't gotten over the budget. I know some of the line items were over because Carol was finishing up her mandatory classes, and that had to do with a lot of traveling. She would have to go to Trenton, she would have to go, wherever the classes were held, she would have to travel. It wasn't a pick and choose. The state says, okay, this set of classes will be held in Trenton. You don't have an option to go to, Bergen Community College or up at the Police Academy in Mahwah. The AOC basically says it's going to be here. So I know on those line items I was, we were a little bit over on them. Office supplies, I think I was slightly over on that. We did have a problem with the metal detector this year, in which we had to purchase a new one. It was much more economical to purchase a new one than it was to fix the old one. And if they fixed the old one, it might have not made it another 2 or 3 years. So, that was an unexpected expense this year that we weren't, prepared for.
Do you have any idea of the outstanding fines and penalties that the court has?
I do have a worksheet that does say how many outstanding, fines there are. It's not an exorbitant amount of money. The collection agencies, they like going after the towns like Newark or the Oranges, where there's millions of dollars outstanding. We're not, we're not anywhere near that. I mean, we do have people on time payments because they just can't afford to pay, but they're, it's not an exorbitant amount of money where I would say it mandates looking into a collection agency and the collection agency taking part of.
Could you provide us with a report? Just give us the monetary amount and not any identification of any individual case?
No, I would not give you
Right.
the identifications, but I would give you a monetary amount, yeah.
Okay, good.
And been pretty successful in getting people who are on time
Yes.
payments to pay. What I do is, if they go on time payments, they'll get a schedule, and the installments require them to pay by Tuesdays or be in court on a Tuesday. I have court every Tuesday, the first 4 Tuesdays. So if the payment is not going to be made, then they have to come into court and talk to me about why they're not going to make the payment. I don't know exactly, but I think that's helped us a lot in collecting the outstanding money. There are going to be people who just aren't going to pay. And every once in a while, we'll have someone come in 15 years.
Yes.
I was judge here from 1988 to 1990, and I actually had somebody who came in court recently whom I had fined in 1989. So people come back after a while. You know. The long arm of the law caught up with him because he needed to do something, and he had to get a license or something, and all of a sudden he had to go pay his fines all over the place. But we'll gladly provide you with the the list. We just can't identify specific cases.
Any questions? Kathleen?
Thank you for coming again. I appreciate it. This has been like an eye-opening experience to hear from you. As far as technology goes, how do you feel your technology? Do you feel up to date? Do you feel that it's outdated?
The only technology that we're allowed is what the state gives us. Our computer program is the state-based. Technically it's called ATS, Automated Traffic System, ACS, Automated Criminal System. I can't go to Alan and say, I need the new Windows, or I need this. It's whatever the state gives us. It's just up to a couple years ago, we still had the dot matrix printer. It was, the state does run a little slow.
We have,
it's whatever they give us. We do now have a laptop on the bench that I'm able to access people's driver's histories through DMV, which is a very big help on the bench. So computer-wise, we don't have a choice.
Yeah, we do have big screen TV, which we need sometimes in trials, especially the drunk driving trials. Any type of trial where the police car cam comes into play, and that's helpful. So I want to thank you all for helping us with that.
Yeah, that was the police department thing.
Oh, police department? Okay,
yes.
well, but thanks. But that is very helpful, and having what the state allows us, and we've been able to get what the state allows us.
Yes.
It has been helpful too.
Yes, and then we did probably about 3 years ago, we purchased the CD recording system because the double cassette one wasn't, we found out through a couple,
There's one right there.
yes, that it wasn't working, it wasn't recording. So.
Is that the most modern technology they'll let you have?
No, we have the
CDs?
CDs, yes.
You can't do digital?
No.
Yeah.
How many cameras do you have down? Do you have cameras?
We have one just like you have right there.
Uh-huh.
There's also one in the hallway outside.
Yeah, I think the one in the hallway is aimed at the metal detector, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Mhm.
Yeah, covers the entire hallway.
Anything else? Judge, thanks for coming.
So I would invite you all to come down if you sit your
We'd like to-
Voluntarily.
We'd like to see you once a year, just to come and give us the state of the court and how you're functioning and what your needs are and what the volume is like. And thank you, Noreen, for
Thank you.
keeping everything smoothly.
She does.
5 days a week. Thank you
No,
again.
thank you for having us come. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, we have Mr. Smart and Mr. Gordon here on our study for the Special Improvement District. Gentlemen?
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, hope you all have a great Thanksgiving when it comes time for you to do so. It's good to see you again. And behind you is a display that shows the study area that we are prepared to talk about. Tonight we'll leave these behind, but they represent perhaps the best and less than the best of what visitors, investors, prospective shoppers, prospective homeowners see when they come through Kindercramack Road. And I think most of you would agree that you would love to present your face to the world as it's represented here, not here. So we did display these at our community meeting, and I'll leave these behind for you. We did have a community meeting, and if I might start out by just reading a short note we got from one of the attendees at the meeting, representing TD Bank, building itself as America's most convenient bank. It was a pleasure speaking with you and meeting with the representatives of council on Wednesday night, and we thank you for allowing me to be present on behalf of TD Bank. We're here to support our community and want to express our interest in the efforts you're undertaking to improve River Edge. We'd like to sit down with you and the mayor and council and further discuss the improvement proposals and the collaboration between River Edge and how we might assist. Please let me know what works best for you. Thank you, and I look forward to your reply. That was one of several calls that we got following the meeting. Small, but nevertheless, we found it to be very positive. Thank you for the opportunity, Mark and I thank you for the opportunity of giving us the opportunity to assist you in a series of conversations about the potential for your own community. You gave us a brief. You asked us to look at a number of things, and tonight we will leave you with our findings and a couple of recommendations. If I may, I want to extend my appreciation and Mark's appreciation to your administrator and his staff who helped us put together the stakeholder listing, the community meeting, and all of the communications that was essential in establishing that community meeting, as well as the data that we use to deliver our recommendations to you tonight. Without their staff support, we would not be able to do the job you asked us to do. You asked us to assess the possibility of having an improvement district in your community. We, in working with you and the staff, identified a potential 222 stakeholders, including 129 commercial property owners, business owners, realtors, and former Chamber of Commerce leadership within the boundaries of the proposed improvement district, again, which is there and which includes the entirety of your commercially zoned properties along Kindercramack Road. We found, in my experience, a very cohesive district that we could look at as a whole. We didn't have to piece it. We didn't have to pull it together like so many other communities may have to do. There's a cohesiveness to it. There's a flow to it that allowed us to take a look at it without having to stretch our imaginations. We worked with the staff to invite them to a community meeting, to update them on the conversations and interest that you had in helping improve the commercial vitality and profitability of the district and its commercial properties for them, as well as for your residents who would want to shop at family-owned businesses or others within the district. We reviewed with them briefly your willingness to engage in the conversation without any foregone conclusions. We encouraged them to work with you in continuing the conversation if you chose to continue it. We also asked those who attended and invited those who were invited to attend but chose not to let us know if they didn't want to have any conversation. And we have not heard anyone who said, stop talking, we have no interest in it.
So we think the ball remains in your court. If you wish to move forward, we have found a number of things we'd be pleased to share with you. You also asked us to look at several other areas, including parking and possibilities for improving the area in and around the station, consistent with some of the discussions you've had over the years. And we're prepared to give you some thoughts about that. One of the key elements that we did before we had the meeting was to assess the economic viability of any district to sustain itself financially. It's a precursor to having any reasonable conversation. If a commercial district has so few properties or has so little valuation that it can't financially sustain any program, then there's no purpose in even pursuing the conversation. There are some small districts that have a carrying capacity within the district that's affordable to those commercial property owners to sustain, perhaps, as Metuchen did years ago, the creation of a parking lot at a cost of $39,000. Maywood has a special improvement district which it uses to fund a parking lot. So if a commercial district doesn't have the capacity to sustain a financial assessment, there really isn't any purpose, except a limited purpose or no purpose at all, in having the conversation. And one of the pleasant things that we found, and we'll give you this tonight, one of the pleasant things that we found is that for an assessment on top of property taxes of less than 6%, so if a commercial property owner is paying $10,000 in taxes, and they were to be taxed an additional 6% through an assessment, they would pay an additional $600 a year. And if you wanted to look at this area as a source of how much revenue it might generate without undue burdening of the commercial property owners, at less than 6% you could raise $200,000. At less than 3% you could raise an additional $100,000, which could immediately be reinvested in programs that sustain and improve the commercial vitality. It could be used for an array of programs. It could be used for branding. It could be used for sign and facade grants. It could be used for a variety of programs that have proven themselves in commercial districts. Let me finish if I might, then please feel free. So we've established a financial capacity. If you wish to use it, we've also contrasted that with other Bergen County districts that we're familiar with, which range anywhere from a little less than 3% to a little less than 9%. So from our point of view, you have the capacity. At the community meeting that we held, I asked those in attendance, using the same example that I just used with you, if you were paying $10,000 and somebody asked you to pay 4% on top of that for a district that could return that investment to you in some way, shape, or form that was meaningful to you, would that be a burden to you? And the property owners that were there and the business owners that were there who would pay that assessment said no. Key issue is it useful? Do we get it? Or does it go to somebody else for something that has no benefit to us? And the answer was, if it's yours and you can benefit from it, would 4% or 5% be too much for you to live with? And the answer was no. Just let's continue the conversation and figure out what it is we would benefit from. So the financial capacity of your district, from our point of view, in comparison to other districts, and please bear in mind, I've established approximately 30% of the 90 districts that exist. So I have a fairly good sense of how little districts pay and how much people pay. In Elizabeth, New Jersey, on Elizabeth Avenue, they pay about 18%. In River Road, they're paying a little less than 3% now in Fair Lawn. So every district pays what it can afford. But in addition to that, you asked us to look at parking and in the area in and around the train station.
we have looked at parking, and we believe that there are two opportunities for you in relationship to parking. The first is the area in and around the Verizon lot, where I have worked with Verizon and Public Service and other institutional players to take their parking lots and redirect their use in cooperation with local communities for service as commuter parking lots or business employee parking lots or resident shopper parking lots. And in looking at Verizon's lot, we believe that that is a conversation you should have with them because we think it will add to your total parking inventory. In addition to that, you had directed us in your efforts to prepare parking in relationship to shopper and employee parking for businesses on North Kinderkramak Road on borough-owned property on Grove Street. We think that although the property certainly can be used for parking, that you would be well served from our experience in other communities by ensuring before you expend additional time, effort, and money on that lot that you enter into cooperative parking agreements with the property owners who are have the ability to compel through their land leases their tenants to use the lot, perhaps paying a fee to you for the privilege of doing so, to direct their employees to the lot so that you do not undertake the expense yourself, building it, hoping they will come. You can build it in anticipation of their being required to come. That's a lesson that I've learned over the years, and we have shared it with you. In addition to that, you asked us to take a look at the relationship of the area in and around the train station and our suggestions relating to it. First and foremost, we believe that the area has much potential, and I believe others on this council and previous councils see the same thing. Capturing that potential has perhaps eluded this borough for a while, certainly New Jersey Transit, but we believe that that a future partnership that includes the county may be possible, and we are going to recommend, if you wish, that that conversation should be held with the county. We have already discussed with the county's economic development director what we perceive as the potential of a funding partnership to encourage the further development of this area, and we think that there's a potential there. Let me turn this area of transit-oriented development over to Mark, who is more of a specialist in this than I am. Mark?
Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.
As I mentioned at the community meeting, only 6 communities in Bergen County have 2 train stations, which is a small number of communities that have two access points to the commuter rail network. And then in looking at your 2 train stations on the Pascack Valley line, you have the number 1 and the number 2 highest ridership stations on the line. So your presence and the riders who board there are very significant to the overall health of the line. As Don said, there's potential for transit-oriented development, especially at the Newbridge Landing train station. Transit-oriented development has a number of advantages. It encourages transit ridership, which keeps more traffic off of the local streets. It tends to include a mix of uses within a couple of blocks, which makes a more pedestrian-oriented area that's better to walk or ride bicycles. and make the types of communities that appeal to the younger generation. Millennials tend to like to live in communities that are more walkable and close to transit, so there's an opportunity to keep some of your younger adults in the community. So both Don and I are bullish on the opportunities for transit-oriented development. We've looked at the experience, from the last 3 or 4 years, and we have some suggestions going forward. The original plan was just looking at the NJ Transit property, and we believe that was too limited. The parcel is jagged in shape. It's adjacent to sensitive wetlands, and plus you have the transit policy that wants to keep or increase the number of commuter parking spaces. So when you put all those constraints on a relatively small parcel, developers look at it, and not too many are going to be lining up for that particular opportunity, as it was expressed in the previous area for redevelopment. What we're recommending going forward, and we would be glad to work with you on, is to look at a larger area. Look at some of the other properties in the C1 and C2 zones adjacent to the New Bridge Landing station, and look at some changes to zoning that would increase the interest in the development community. I think a goal for you should be not just to attract one developer, but to attract 3 or 4 or 5 developers so that they can present alternate proposals, and you could select what would be best for the community. So those are some initial thoughts on the development area, and I'll now turn it back to Don.
What we are not suggesting is that you do this alone. This, we sense, is an ideal time for your embracing and expanding upon the notion of a public-private partnership. The SID represents such a public-private partnership. It provides a financial mechanism, it provides an engagement mechanism for private stakeholders. It is also leveraging capability. The fact that you would have a local mechanism to generate financing, to generate private sector support, is an added value to New Jersey Transit. It's an added value to the County of Bergen. It's an added value to Bergen County Economic Development. So there are, we see the financial capacity, and we would encourage you to continue exploring the use of a special improvement district, if for no other reason than to get a source of additional funding to focus on projects of high value to the commercial community as well as your own residents. 2, we would recommend to you that you move forward with business parking in 2 areas, one of which you had already identified, but the other of which to us presents an opportunity of a low-hanging fruit that could produce new parking within 6 months without substantial expense on your part. And that's the Verizon line. And 3, we believe that you will go farther in this area if you actively use the impetus that you will gain from a special improvement district by engaging the private sector, by creating a funding mechanism to engage the county, who we believe has some financial resources that, provided the appropriate groundwork has been laid, that they may be able to add to your own contributions to strengthen the development potential of an enlarged property footprint. Let me stop here and open it up to questions, Mayor. Alfonso.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, and I apologize, I was not at the stakeholder meeting, but how many businesses did you actually have in attendance?
We had less than 10.
Less than 10, okay.
Yep.
Out of?
220.
220.
Invitees.
Okay. Now, you said of those less than 10, 8, 9, nobody said stop.
That's correct.
Do you interpret then the other, people who didn't show up as saying there's a lack of interest on their part?
I wouldn't necessarily interpret that.
Okay.
My experience in these types of communities is there is relatively low attendance in most cases. The initial meetings attract those who may have an axe to grind. In this case, you did not attract such people. You did attract an interesting group of people who seem to indicate a willingness to follow your leadership, which is good. I believe that a second meeting, and we had offered a second meeting, will attract more, especially if you decide to move this conversation to the next level and say, look, we're not only investigating this, we're willing to do this, and now is the time for you to come out and tell us why we shouldn't. I think if you raise the bar of the expectation, you might get a higher return.
All right. Just have a few follow-ups, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
All right. Now, just looking at your map, and I think what you said before, are you recommending one single SID, or, because you said it was this continuous entity, or are you recommending several improvement districts?
You have a continuity here along Kinder Carmack that complies, and works within your own zoning, so you can have a unified area.
I mean, because there are, really, if you look at it, I like the demonstrative aids, you do have a unit here, there's residential in here, then you have additional businesses here, and then again, a huge parcel of residential, some residential with business opportunities, and then this separate district. I mean, there are significant breaks in continuity between those three zones.
Actually, it's Kinder Carmack Road itself, the utilities in and under it, the sidewalks that do exist or that don't exist, the lighting that unifies the area. So there are a number of unifying factors that allow us to present what would be a unifying element in all of this.
I'll just add, we thought about should there be 2 or 3 districts, and we thought it made much more sense to have a single unified one.
So that 200,000 that you mentioned with a 6% additional tax is the entire district would raise, the entire town's commercial areas would generate 200,000 at 6%. Okay. Now, and again, I'm not an expert in this, obviously, but our main problem, I think, is not in rehabilitating existing businesses, which you might want to, impose some sort of fee to do streetscaping and improve the business district as a whole. Our issue, I think, is in attracting businesses. Do you think it's attractive to businesses where you're telling them, hey, welcome to River Edge, FYI, we have a 6% additional tax? I mean, because that's what it is, because you're proposing...
The way you phrased it, you certainly made it sound unappealing.
Well, I think it is. I think it is unappealing.
Well, then there isn't a question there, is there, Council?
Well, do you think it's not more beneficial then to approach this town as areas in need of redevelopment and rehabilitation where you're not imposing a tax, but rather you can offer short-term tax abatements, long-term tax abatements, pilot programs to bring in business rather than tax businesses that aren't even here yet that you need to bring in?
First of all, I believe that it lies within your authority right now to provide a 5-year tax abatement without any of those actions.
Well, you need to declare certain areas in need of rehabilitation, which we haven't done.
Well, I'm not sure that that's the case with the 5-year, $5,000 a year tax abatement. But again, many other towns have used the cohesiveness and unification that comes with an SID as a mechanism to treat issues of code compliance, to treat issues of zoning that can make an environment more attractive. Now, you don't need financing to do that. On the other hand, if you do wish to, for instance, create a cohesive message that requires a delivery system that requires money, then you have the ability to use this system to raise that money. The fact is that there are 90 SIDS that have answered that question in their business communities, and their answer is we don't need state regulation, either through designation as an area in need of rehabilitation or an area in need of redevelopment to obtain those benefits. That's their local answer. Fairlawn, for instance, has not declared any area in need of rehabilitation at this point in 20 years, but they have created 2 special improvement districts.
And the last question I have, you mentioned, I guess, expanding the area around the transit site to make it more enticing for developers. What is the mechanism that you're suggesting through acquiring that land?
Well, the exact mechanism would be, studied as a part of additional work. What we are saying is that to have enough area to attract developers, you need to add some additional blocks. And whether you would just change the zoning on that and have zoning that would attract people, or take some other regulatory measures would be determined later.
What zoning are you suggesting or you have in mind? Changes?
Well, we've just done a fairly low-key appraisal of your current strategies, both New Jersey Transit's and yours, and as well as the counties. And it's clear from our experience, and Mark's in particular, is that the focus is very narrow. And New Jersey Transit hasn't found it too enticing because they haven't really been a partner in any of your approaches. They just haven't bought your rationale. So our sense is that you need to take a step back, you need to take a fresh look at it, and you need to look to making larger parcels available than currently embraced by your own redevelopment plan. If I phrased it correctly?
Yeah, because what was done before with the Nelson study and the earlier area, I mentioned before the shape of the parcel. The first thing a developer wants is a good-sized parking deck, because he's going to need to accommodate some commuter parking and also some parking for his development, whether it's new retail, new office, new residential. And if he's going to start seeing so many hundred parking spaces, there's not a good place to put that on the existing transit site. But when you start making other blocks available, maybe the parking deck goes somewhere else where you have a better shape, and you put other types of uses on the transit property. And I think, based on my experience in both the public and the private sector, that expanding the area will make it much more attractive.
We didn't come here tonight with specific and concrete answers. We get the sense that, one, that you want to do better, and we think you can if you open yourselves up to putting aside your previous discussion and taking a fresh look at this. And in that fresh look include the County of Bergen as a partner at the table. Get New Jersey Transit back to the table, and perhaps through the mechanism of a special improvement district, bring the private sector to the table. Right now, your table's had too few people at it. Broaden the discussion, broaden the stakeholder participation, add a little bit of money from a variety of pots, and you may have a whole different kettle of fish by the time you're finished.
You want to involve some of the key property owners in that area, talk with them, brainstorm with them. They may come up with some creative ideas, and you can start to put together coalitions with a broader group.
Right? Ellen?
Thank you. I did enjoy the meeting on the 5th. I thought it was very informative, so thank you for all the work you put in to present that evening. a cohesive SID, the whole corridor of Kinderknack. We do have a lot of residential properties in that space. Can you talk a little bit about what impact there may or may not be to those properties as part of making a cohesive SID?
Well, we do know that you lack sidewalks. We do know that all your areas are not uniformly lit. We certainly know that you've attempted a variety of branding elements to say that we're a prideful community. You have banners on some of the poles, but not on others. At the very least, if you can find some unifying streetscape elements, some ways to slow traffic down at key residential areas, some way to add sidewalks where you don't have them, improve sidewalks where they need to be improved, in and of itself, those inure to the benefit of all of the adjacent residential properties.
Follow-up? Do you have an example of any negative impact
Of having a special improvement
where
district?
there are residential properties?
Actually, I can't think of any. They're not paying. If the strategy succeeds, they will have a better mix of businesses to choose from. They will certainly have, perhaps if you focus as your priority, new sidewalks, they'll have safer streets. If you find ways to slow down traffic, they'll have safer streets. So really, there is no downside to the residential community for a special improvement district.
Kathleen?
You talked about our train, Pascack Valley, having the 1 and 2 top ridership on that line. Now, did you look at the bus ridership? Because I know we have the 165 that transports a lot of people, and the Rise in parking lot is right by where they stop. So that could be something that could be brought in.
In our discussions with New Jersey Transit, they and we are mindful that this, their priority is intermodal transportation, so they would automatically, and we would encourage, we wouldn't want to talk just about train ridership, we would want to talk about all forms of commuters, bus, pedestrian access, as well as train riders. So yeah.
Do you have any numbers on the bus, or haven't looked at that?
We do have some statistics that I've shared. I don't know if I brought it with me, but we shared previously with Alan. You have a significant amount of commuter bus ridership. Historically, you know, your trains didn't go to Midtown, so a lot of the Midtown riders would take the buses. Now you have the opportunity to switch at Secaucus, so that the Midtown commuters have two options, which is better. But we see commuter bus continuing as an important part of the transportation network.
Now, I have another question regarding like making everything kind of unified. The sign ordinance. So if you have this tax and it goes into the kitty and you can use it to make new signs, would we have to do something with our sign ordinance in order to have you know, everyone comply with a kind of unified look?
I think it would really, the nice thing about an SID is it allows you, the elected officials, to set your own priorities. So given that your money can only go so far, you'll be required to identify 2 to 3 priorities that you're able to fund. And quite frankly, I think that's an ongoing part of the conversation that you'll want to have with the stakeholders and ask them, if we raise $100,000, where is it that you'd like to see us invested? How can we best help you? And once they tell you that, you'll be able to write a strategy around it and fund it. So it's really your choice.
Let me just add, I have the numbers you were asking about. From the 2010 census of River Edge's 5,300 commuters, 13% or 700 commuters use public transportation, that's bus and rail, to get to work. New Jersey Transit has difficulty allocating bus ridership to communities. They do it by fare zones, and on the 165 route there were 1,300 weekday boardings in fare zone 4, which includes in addition to River Edge, Oradell, and Paramus, and 5,000 boardings in fare zone 3, which includes 7 communities in the area.
Ed?
Mr. Smart, you asked a million-dollar question, and I think it gets to what Al was trying to get at. Although we may have a cohesive district, the three sections have vastly different wants and needs, and I think trying to get a consensus on where the money should be spent is where the problem's going to be. You basically said it yourself. Downtown, we have undeveloped properties around the train station. The north, there's an issue with the parking. We don't have that issue with the parking in the middle part of town. So if we were to come and say, all right, we're going to spend $100,000 on a parking lot, Mr. Grasso and everybody from the northern town say, hooray, hooray, that's what we want. Everybody down the train station say, no, 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 I don't want my money going for that. So I think until we know what the specific needs are for specific properties, this isn't going to go anywhere. Similarly, the four properties you showed us as the bad list, two of them have already been approved for redevelopment on the planning board, so they're under redevelopment anyway. One is scheduled to come to the planning board, and the fourth one is an owner-occupied property who, for whatever reason he chooses to, doesn't improve his own property. So again, so there's different rationales, there's different reasons. I've heard different issues about what tenants pay for rent in certain parts of Quebec. So I know that's more in depth of what this study was supposed to go into, but I think we need to develop that kind of information before you can decide that this is giving a one-size-fits-all solution to what are very different properties.
Well,
or problems, I should say.
I think that if this were easy, you would have achieved it a long time ago. The fact is that that if you move forward, you'll have the opportunity for engaging business owners and property owners in helping you sort out the possibilities, allocate the resources and priorities, and find some wisdom of Solomon in figuring out how to share the limited resources that you have. The fact is, I'm not sure you have to choose one over the other. You may be able to help all three sections or four sections in a variety of ways. Zoning, for instance, which would probably be of more help in the area of the train station, is a far different element of a strategy than a sign and awning grant that might be of more use in the other portions of the district. That you could do both, I think, is very reasonable. I don't think you need to choose just one solution for one problem.
I would add on that having the three different business areas is actually a strength, because you're going to have different sizes of stores in the different districts. And some may be looking more toward a medium box, other smaller stores, and when you're trying to attract new businesses, you're giving them opportunities of three different areas to locate. One of the three may be most appropriate for that business.
But we can enact a sign and facade ordinance this month, and we can have a trigger when there's a new tenancy. They have to come in and upgrade their facades, and a business owner might want to be more willing to spend 6% of their money upgrading their own property rather than contributing to a vast pool. They said if they don't know that they're going to have a common interest with 200 different property owners.
Well, first of all, they have a common interest, and it's River Edge. They're united here. They're taxpayers. Many of them have longer-term interests in your community. But in point of fact, they have some unifying factors. You don't have a broad-based marketing program for your community that is either aimed at investors or business owners or residents. Other communities do. You could use a SID assessment to promote the River Edge brand. So really, it's really up to local leadership to figure out what and how to distribute the human resources that you will acquire, the financial resources, as well as the strategic planning resources. So, again, my experience is you don't have to choose only one answer.
But I get back to the broader point again. It's like, you read a letter from TD Bank. TD Bank has a very nice facility. They have a big parcel. They have sufficient parking. And you've shown other pictures of other buildings where, again, if you're collecting money from TD Bank to give, as an example, say we gave a facade or a signage grant, they're subsidizing somebody who chooses not to take care or upgrade their own properties. So I said, you know, they're going to want something more than just being
Are you sure?
altruistic.
Are you sure that's the case?
I'm not, no, but I'm saying, but there are some cases where buildings come in and they look obsolete, and they don't seem to be updating them, and that could be one of the reasons why they're not attracting tenants also. It's not
It
just...
could be, because they've made a choice. But
Yeah.
this community has also made a choice to let them do that. There are strategies. Your judge appeared in front of you, and he indicated, and the court administrator indicated, there was an uptick in cases appearing before them as a result of your decision to hire a code enforcement officer. One of the questions I was waiting to hear asked was, Judge, are you letting them skate, or are you really holding them to the letter of the law? Because, again, these are strategies. If you as a community had let a property owner sit there and not attend to their property, then maybe you could change that. Or maybe you don't wish to, but it's your choice. Other communities have said, we don't want our residential property owners not paying attention to their unmowed lawns, and we're going to prioritize our code inspector and get them out there. So really, this is a mechanism that you can use in any way you see fit. If you have no reason to use it, then you don't need it. But that's a choice you'll have to make in discussion with yourselves and those who perhaps you would wish to ask to fund it.
Vito? I think in 20 minutes we already managed to lose focus. The first decision we have to make is whether we have one improvement district with 3 or 4 zones in it, or 3 separate improvement districts. Because it seems to me the only common thread is Kinderkamak Road. Both site-wise, the geography of Kinderkamak Road is such that it forces you to change the needs and the requirements of the district as you go through it. Clearly, the downtown area remains the most appealing area, and the one where I've heard the word zoning and other devices to acquire property and have it ready for development. It doesn't take much to understand that most of our building stock in the downtown area is at best outdated. Some of it doesn't meet many of the new building codes regulation, and even zoning required building code requirements. The problem is when we do zoning to attract the developer, you have to offer the developer a high FAR, which is something that's being done in downtown Newark, where an acre, a parcel of land of 1 acre is sold for $13 to $16 million, because you're giving the developer the opportunity to put up a 30-story building on it. So right away we go into far deeper consequences, and we have to be careful about, you know, SID sounds good, it almost, you know, sounds like Star Wars type of thing, but it quickly becomes lost in translation, because then we are guilty of losing the focus on the overall district and concentrating on specific spots within the district that we're very familiar with. Why? Because we live here every day. So it's not an easy job. I mean, you guys come here, you give us your word, you give us some piece of papers. We have to develop a vision for the town. Most importantly, we have to be strong enough to maintain that vision. That hasn't happened, and I think maybe just by talking about it and hearing different opinion and everything else helps, but then we have to put all these opinions into facts, and that hasn't happened. And you really haven't told us anything that I haven't heard in different shape or forms. But if there is one thing that I always supported
bringing you back is to kind of force us to focus again. I mean, the makeup of the council and the mayor itself has changed over the past 3 or 4 years and will continue to change. We want to make sure that we lay a good foundation. Should I not be reelected, or should her not be reelected, or any one of us, that the people that take our place have bought into that initial decision-making and will continue to push for it. Otherwise, we'll always be talking about the New Jersey Transit. Well, by the way, I have lost faith in New Jersey Transit doing things good for the towns a long, long time ago. Because it seems their answer is always, we'll raise the fare. That's another conversation. And kind of take the bull by our own horns, by the horns, and we steer it. We steer it with the help of professionals such as yourself. But there are some very painful decisions that will have to be made. So, do we want one SID? What would be your recommendation? One SID with 3 separate zones? Or like Alphonse was referring to, 3 separate SIDs? Because then for each one of them, we will have to, putting aside the common thread of Pinnacomack Road, we will have to analyze the needs of each SID so that the merchants that occupy that specific SID will not feel like, you know, they're part of a giant melting pot, which, by the way, never works, melting pot idea, and our individual that we want to help to improve their business and consequently improve our town. I mean, commercial business is what's accessible to everyone, not just people that live in town. Residences are not, unless you plan to rob them, then of course you access the residences. But for as trivial as the example may have been, the point I'm trying to make is, yes, we do have to come up with constructive ideas to help the business foster and improve and be successful. Because only successful business will in turn also help us attract new businesses. If something is stagnant, but the business owners are the ones that talk to their colleagues or their friends and other people that own similar businesses that may be located in Glen Rock or Ridgewood or some of these other communities where they have a perceived sense of town, center of town. We don't. We lost it with a hurricane or whatever at the turn of the century, and it was never rebuilt. The answer was the Huffman Cool Big Box. So, in conclusion, I think I don't want to get lost again.
Well, you mentioned one thing that resonates with me, and that is each one of you is subject to election. Whatever vision you bring to it, there's a term limit. Some of you may not stand for election. Some of you may not survive an election. But the creation of an SID allows you to create a body of experienced individuals who represent the business community, who have a continuity beyond you and in partnership with you. So that if you can create a vision, you can also create a mechanism to help you implement that vision over time. And that's one of the benefits of having a district management corporation made up of 8, 13 stakeholders in the community with business ties to the community. Having them act as a mechanism to help each council moderate a vision, negotiate a vision, and carry it out over a period of time.
But what is the blueprint? What is the, for as simple as these steps may be, where is a tangible document? And if your answer is, we have to create one, fine, that's your answer. But what is an 8.5 by 11 sheet, the lists, based on our experience, these are the steps you need to take or you need to consider. Because that piece of paper will remain, if accepted and modified by us, but will remain for the one that will come after us. But to be here, that's where I get frustrated, because...
The piece of paper is important. You've had lots of pieces of paper. You've had other people who've come in, Nielsen is a good example. He does a wonderful piece of paper. What you don't have is a mechanism to interpret it and make it a living document. You're the only body that interprets. And right now, you have the opportunity to create another living body, if you want it, that can provide continuity in implementing a group of goals that you can foster together. And that's through the District Management Corporation.
Anthony, you had a question? Anthony had his hand up. And then Thomas. And then I think everybody had their shot. Yeah, I think everybody had their shot.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the answer is I have three separate SIDs, and I guess to your point, with the old saying that the high tide raises all boats, so yeah, it's true. What would one person care or care less about, or they don't pay and someone else is paying to have an improvement done, but that does help the general area look better. I used to be the manager of a condo complex. You improve the look of that whole complex, not for one person, but for everybody, even though somebody else might be a pig or don't care about their unit, but you still have to take care of the whole as a team. So I guess to your point there, but if there was a tax or a fee, I know myself as a business owner, yeah, I would be a little bit leery of hearing that, Councilman Bartolone's point. It's like, why would I want to pay? The tax doesn't scare me away. But I guess, if anything, if I was told what I'm going to get for that tax, I don't mind paying extra fees all day throughout my life, as long as I know what I'm getting, what's that going to do for me. If you're just going to tell me this is the tax, 6%, 4%, yeah, I'm walking out. But if I'm getting something for it, I'll pay whatever, 18%, I don't care.
Value for your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I do as a business owner too. I try to educate my customer. Well, this is why I'm more expensive or not, or whatever it is, but if that was going to go that route, that's my 2 cents. Thank you, Mayor.
Just let me try to correct me if I'm wrong, but your opinion is that the commercial districts that you have outlined on your plan can carry, are cohesive enough to carry administratively one SID or one bid, correct?
You have the financial capacity to fund anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000.
And that if we decided to have 2 or maybe even 3
I would
separate ones?
be adamantly opposed to your making that decision for one simple reason. If you unite them along Kindercamack Road, you have the ability to provide a rationale to attract other financing because you're presenting a unified area around the thing that ties you all together, Kindercamack Road. And I would adamantly discourage you from bifurcating it and cutting out the one thing that unites you all, because not only does it unite you, it gives you the rationale to improve the unimproved portions of it with granting authority.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thomas.
Great. I actually think the one SID is a much better idea than the 3 separate SIDs, because it seems if we go with 3 separate SIDs, we're diluting a lot of different aspects of the plan. One of the things, though, I need clarifying is, if I understand it correctly, and I may not, if we have 3 separate SIDs and we try to do an assessment for each of those SIDs, those assessments are reserved for those separate SIDs. So what we do is we have 3 SIDs that can't raise much money, so we have this pool of money, if we choose to assess them, that is really quite useless. Whereas if we unite the 3 SIDs into one SID, then we have somewhere between nothing and $200,000, and we can say to property owners this year, we're going to work on parking.
Exactly.
And this will not benefit you down at the south part of town, but it will benefit the north part of town. We'll do some zoning for you.
Right.
And then, but what we promise is next year, your goal is that we then do something with streetscapes, or we do something with safe streets, or we do something else. And next year, it will be your turn. And as long as we keep those promises, we keep investment, emotional investment, and if we have that emotional investment, then what we do is we have a dynamic that moves forward. What we have now in River Edge is nothing. We have a town that historically talks a lot and gets very little done. Everything takes forever. I think having, and I get this experience a little bit because I was a union president. And as a union president, I represented teachers, I represented secretaries, I represented paraprofessionals. I did not represent the custodians, but the custodian union would often meet with me. Decisions we would make as we would negotiate for contracts or enter into just simple discussions about workplace conditions would affect everyone. Now, was everyone getting an equal piece of the pie? No. But was everyone getting something versus dividing ourselves up and getting nothing? So I see the arguments about 3 districts. I understand where they're coming from, but from my experience about trying to organize communities, and I've had some experience organizing small communities, large communities in non-governmental areas, it's much better to say, okay, we're going to have one SID, we have a plan for the future. Not everybody's going to get something every year, but within a cycle of years, everybody's going to get something they want. And bottom line is, you now are going to become an entity that can prod us. Right now, we have an entity, the council, that is not really, is historically, since I would say, from my understanding, from the 1980s, not really gone anywhere. And we have these partisan debates that go back and forth, which are good, and that's government, but it doesn't seem to offer a cohesiveness. It seems like, okay, now the Democrats in charge, now the Republicans in charge, now the Democrats, and we cycle between different points of view, where if we had a third party at the table, the SID, the business owners, to say, hey guys, I don't care whether you're Democrats or Republicans, what are you going to do for us over the next 3 years? I want a piece of, I want 1 year out of 3 years. Let's look at our 3 parts. You can raise a substantial amount of money and get things done in a timely fashion. So, my question to you is, those are my comments. My question to you is, what would we do next, and how soon can we do it?
First of all, as you see from my response to the councilman, he's made the point that perhaps I hadn't made as well as you did. When I first came to Cranford, the first SID in the state, they wanted to do a huge streetscape program, which they could not fund as a whole. They would have torn up the town for years. So what they did was, on a pay-as-you-go basis, they took a couple of blocks. Their town was split by a railroad, and then it was split by a highway. And they took a couple of blocks in the northwest section the first year, then the northeast section the next. And they did exactly what you're talking about. They made sure that they kept their commitment, and they gave everybody something that they deemed important in a timely manner. Again, this is your conversation. Mark and I are facilitators. The next steps that we believe you have the ability to take, in whole or in part, are, we have one more community meeting. Put it out on the table. Use a council meeting and bring the people in and say, listen, we've been told we can get this money out of you. Do you want us to? If we did, what would you want us to use it for? We can have a meeting out in the private sector. We can have a meeting in the public sector. Let the community tell you. Give those 220 people a second bite at the apple to either eat it or throw it away. Let them tell you. That's in our current agreement. We'll be glad to work with the staff to do that. If you perceive that they're willing to give you a shot at this, it's your choice, not theirs, but if they're willing to give you a shot at it, then take the shot. And we have suggested to you that you allow us to go forward with them, with representatives of the business community, who you will designate as part of a steering committee, to work with us in another phased project that will cost you money, or them, because there are ways
for them to fund it with you. You don't have to do it by yourself. Set up a steering committee. You're part of it, they're part of it. Go through the process that we just finished in Fort Lee, Ed, successfully, I would point out. And let us come back to you with a proposal to the community and to you that says, look, over the next 3 years, we'd like to do this. Over here, and over here. We'll come back to you with a work plan with a cost. We'll also come back to you with the ability to bring to you leaders who will live beyond your terms.
Yeah.
And that's important, ladies and gentlemen. That takes the politics, the partisanship, the multi-year elections that change majorities. It removes the biggest stumbling block to any community getting anything done. It puts it in a public-private partnership that can't operate without you, but at least it lets you share the burden of visioning for your community with people who have more of a stake in it than you do, quite frankly. The ones who pay for it. It gives them a say. It doesn't give them control. You have the control at all times. But it does give them a say with you. That's the first recommendation we're prepared to make. We'll give it to you in writing. We've outlined the steps to do it. The second piece that we'd like to suggest you do is let us help you and get this business parking done. We think you have 2 real opportunities to do it, and do it quickly. We're prepared to help you do it. And last, we are prepared, again, following this last committee meeting, we're prepared to help you work and develop a conversation that may change very much how you see your redevelopment area in cooperation with the County of Bergen and with New Jersey Transit and with major stakeholders in the area. We're prepared to help you facilitate those conversations. We believe that if you take the potential as we see it, at the end of the potential, if you wish a special improvement district, you could add anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000 to your operational budget to improve this district at a cost that we believe is affordable. In other communities, others have afforded it. If you agree to put in a special improvement district, you'll be able to raise an additional sum of money from those benefiting properties for improvements that you can choose to make yourself. You don't have to set up a district management corporation independent from you. You can become the district management corporation yourself. It will give you, we believe, up to $200,000 you can spend on this district specific in ways that you choose. You don't have to go to the general taxpayers to do it. You can leverage that money. You can go to the County of Bergen. You can go to New Jersey Transit. You can go to NJDOT. You can go to the bus companies. You could go to Verizon and say, listen, we want to create more parking and we'll do 50 cents on a dollar. We want you to join us. It'll give you something that you can leverage. We also believe that in a short period of time, we can help you create the 2 new parking lots, one of which you've been talking about for a while, one of which you've already invested money in. And we believe we'll be able to help you create an improved public-private development consensus that will help you get what you've been talking about for so many years. Basically, we believe we can achieve this with you, if you wish to, in 2014 for a total fee not to exceed $62,500. And we're prepared to also help you generate public and private support for that from banks like TD and others that are willing to partner with you in a public-private partnership. That's the sum total of our recommendation. Your choice is to tell us what you want to do in the last and next public meeting that you want to have. We will work with you to have that conversation and move in any direction that you wish to determine.
You have more questions? It's a different point. I just want to clarify something I thought I heard you say earlier about New Jersey Transit. Is it their representation that they said that they've had no part of that process with what's been going on?
No, that was not, I didn't say that at all.
Then what did you say? You said something that we weren't engaged, that you made a statement about why things didn't happen down there.
I believe that I said that we can attempt to engage them at a higher level than they've been engaged before. They're certainly not engaged with you the way they are engaged with other communities, and we think you can and should have more engagement with them. And we think if you engage them in a different way, looking at a broader number of blocks, that they'll be more forthcoming, and there'll be solutions that come out that will be greeted by the coalition and something that you would like to proceed with.
And if there were more stakeholders at the table, if it wasn't just the borough, if there was a SID sitting on one side of us, borough in the middle, and the county on the other side,
And private developers on the other side.
I guess my point is, if we did not have a 10% stake in that property as it is, there would be a 200 or 250 unit apartment building there right now with their 600.
Oh, there's no doubt
So
that
that's what they want.
There's no doubt that they have their desires and you have yours. And as a result, I don't think either one of you have gotten anything. We think that if you change the paradigm, you may get more than what they've offered you to date. That's our hope. We're having a similar conversation right now in Fairlawn around the Radburn station, and at this point we have been able to engage New Jersey Transit in a way that we could not 7 years ago when we tried. We now have the County of Bergen involved, and we believe that in the course of the next 2 months we're going to be announcing a new partnership there to create a strategic plan that will result in new zoning, new parking, and new development in 2014 around the Radburn station. But again, it's only because we changed the table. We broadened the table. And we think the same opportunity is available to you if you choose it.
Just one follow-up. The zoning changes that you're suggesting down in the south end of town, are those to add a more residential element in the south end of town as opposed to a commercial?
I believe that I think we're looking at it from a density point of view right now. And Mark will correct me, but right now the area that everyone's talking about is relatively fixed and smaller. Well, right now it's zoned pretty much as commercial. We would look towards a mixture of uses, but again, you would be the decision makers of exactly how that came out, and how much retail there would be, how much commercial there would be, and how much residential, and maybe not as much as some would like, but having a mixture of uses adds to the vitality of the area, makes the streets more complete, and makes it a part of town that people would want to spend more time in. We don't get the sense that anybody's happy with what's there now. And given that, we think there are possibilities to make everyone a little happier. And therefore start developing an area that hasn't seen it, where everybody wants something to occur.
All right.
We do have copies of materials for you.
Is your proposal for next year broken down into any phases or anything? Because you mentioned the three things. You mentioned the parking in a short amount of time. You mentioned the business improvement district. Is it broken down into?
It really isn't. We wanted to see your reaction to it, but more importantly, you've got the last community meeting.
All right.
I think you would all be better served if you challenged the business community to come in and tell you, hell no, we won't go, or we're skeptical, show us how this will improve. You need to have something from them. You can't assume silence is agreement. I would certainly encourage you to have that meeting. We're we're ready, willing, and able to assist you in doing it. You don't have to do it in December, you can do it in January. You should set the agenda at the level of comfort for you. If you're willing to consider the SID, then you need to tell them that. We're prepared to go forward with this conversation, or we're prepared not to. What do you want us to do? Ask them the question. Let them tell you. And more importantly, if they say to you, we're willing to consider it, then ask them to raise their hands and ask them to volunteer to serve at an appropriate time in helping you answer the question. And if you have in mind some particular leaders in town in the private sector, you may have to reach out personally to get them to come.
I've already received some letters and emails from members of the business community that want to get involved. Okay.
I'd like to offer a comment. I do not think necessarily that we should do the SID or not the SID. I do not necessarily think we should go for the 6% or 0%, but I think that we should tell the business community that we are thinking about it. I do not believe that the business community is going to show up unless they think that we are considering it. It will have no impact on them unless we say we're going to consider it. So we need to say, we are considering it, we are considering up to 6%, but we are also considering, we are also open to them saying no. And if they say no, that's great. But I don't think we should say no. I think we should go with, I personally feel, for the reasons I outlined before, we should go with one SID, because that will not dilute the effectiveness of any fund that we may create, instead of 3 funds with very little money in it and therefore very little capability of achieving change. We have one fund that has enough funds in it, enough monies to achieve change on a cycle basis, south, middle, north. And we say to them, this is what we're thinking about doing. We are thinking about all the way to 6%, though probably not. But that is open to us. We're open to one SID. Come, tell us you want 3 SIDs. Tell us you want 4%. Tell us you want no SIDs. Tell us you want 1 SID but 2%. But if we don't say to River Edge business community that we're going to do something seriously, then nothing will get done, because they won't come to the meetings. Because why do you show up to the meetings? This is just another attempt of the council to spend taxpayers' money on a plan that goes nowhere. We have to say it could go here. Are you on board or not? That's my thing. That's my comment.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a problem with the definitions. We need to understand what makes a SID. Until we understand that, we're not going to be able to explain it to the business owners. The business owners, they're very simple. What's in it for us? What do we tell them? A SID? Oh, what's a SID? Oh, it's a special improvement district. Okay, so what? What does that mean? What is that going to take us? That's what I'm trying to be as simplistic as I can to arrive at a common lowest denominator, instead of just keep going around in circles.
The simplistic answer is you have the ability to create an overlay district from which you can collect up to 6% or any amount that you want as an assessment, which can be used as determined either by yourselves or by a board that you appoint for the improvement of that district. That's the simplistic answer.
That's the SID.
That's the SID.
Okay, so what are the improvements?
That's determined by either you or the board that you appoint. It can range from...
Excuse me, Doc. It seems to me I'm chasing my own tail here. Again, I have to put a stop to this and turn a circular motion into a rectilinear motion so I know where I'm going. I know how to go from point A to point B. It's not that I know where to start and where to end. I'm going to be asked these questions. What's in a SID?
Did any of you read the handbook we delivered to you?
I did.
Did any of you read the handbook we delivered to the community?
Not to the one's community, the one you delivered to us. I don't know if I got the one to
We didn't get it.
It's the same one.
SIDs are created
So-
by an ordinance. The ordinance establishes if you're going to have a board made up of representatives of the business community, or whether the governing body is going to serve as the board of directors.
Streetscape
I understand.
advertising, lighting.
The board of directors, whether it's appointed by the business community, they decide how the money gets spent.
Okay.
But I'm the business owner. I want to know what's in it for me. What is it that what tangibles I'm getting out of this, out of subscribing and supporting
What would you like?
this idea of saying, I don't know. I just know how to sell, I just know how to sell Italian food.
Would you like the grant to do your sign?
I don't even know that these things exist.
They do. Would
Well, you
like
have to
it-
tell
would
me,
you like the
so
grant to do your sign?
you have to tell me so I can tell my constituents.
And that's, well, no. Quite
No.
frankly, that's not necessarily
No.
your job to tell your constituents. Your job is to tell them to get their ass to the next meeting so we can tell them. We can tell them. There's
At least
plenty-
I got that out of you. So we got to the next level here. Because that's my frustration. I'm chasing my own tail here. And you're not doing anything to stop that. It's like, I feel like a dentist. I'm pulling teeth. And whether my colleagues and Brett in here share that or not, that's fine. It's up to them. But I'm extremely frustrated. Because it's like a deja vu all over again here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more with Vito on this. We've had expert after expert come up here, and it's like if I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, Doc, I'm sick. Well, what do you want to do? No, Doc, you're the expert. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. Or I go to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, what do you want to do? No, you're supposed to tell me what to do. We paid you a substantial amount of money on a very tight budget, and we'd like to know, what should we do? All right, we have an improvement district. Great. What do we do? That's where you're supposed to tell us because you're the expert. That's why you're being paid. That's why you want $62,500 additional dollars on top of the 15 you already got, because you are supposed to tell us something that we don't know. We know we make decisions up here, or thank God I won't be in a month, but you're supposed to have told us what we're supposed to do next, and that is sorely missing from this report.
Well, actually, I don't agree with you. So
I'm not shocked about that.
I don't
Mr.
agree
Smart.
that I was supposed to tell you what to do with an SID. I'm telling you the capacity to create this overlay vehicle. We've given you materials that explain what that vehicle does. There is no test that I'm giving you or that the community is going to give you. The fact is that if there were a priority listing obtained from the stakeholders, we did get a small sense from the less than 10 people who attended as to what they wanted. I'm sorry, Councilman, I'm trying to answer your question.
I understand, but
think I'm
don't tell me about the less than 10 people. I mean, that's nothing. That's not representative.
No.
That was a waste of time, in my estimation, because there was nobody there.
Yeah, but you can't hold them accountable for people not showing up.
We got to
But
start somewhere.
that's nothing to base anything on.
Well, it's more than what we had last.
More than what we had before.
Yeah.
No,
We have an identified district that we didn't have
you could have went to your zoning map,
No.
Mayor.
No.
That's our zoning map. That's all. Then he color-coded our zoning map, which is already coded. That's all we have, our zoning map. I've looked at that for
Are you
years.
recommending instead we do nothing like we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years? This is something. It may not be the best, but it's
You're
something to move
recommending
forward.
something because you've had nothing. Not anything good. You just want to do something so that you can say you did something.
Al, you can be as angry as possible, but the point is, we can either say we're not going to do anything, or we could move forward. Another meeting costs us nothing. Putting the businesses on notice that we may move forward is an honest disclosure of what a SID is about. Let's do that much, and if we go to the meeting and we get 100 of the 220, because now they know we're serious, and they say, we don't want this, then guess what? We do exactly what we did when we were on Park.
That's right, Park.
The people came and said we didn't want to do it, so we thought this was a good idea. We were willing to move ahead. They said no. Our obligation as elected officials were to listen to them. We changed our position. Even though some of the real estate agents said we played some good of the game, we didn't. That's democracy. So why not just have a meeting, say, we're thinking about doing this. It may be up to 6%. No promises, no guarantees, but it's something we're looking for. Show up, say no, say yes, say something. But if we don't at least suggest that we're going to, I think we're doing a disservice to our commercial owners and commercial properties, and businesses, and we're doing disservice to the people of River Edge. It costs nothing to have another meeting and say, we may do something. Show up.
You're mistaking what I'm saying.
All right.
What I'm suggesting to you is that
Anthony has
you're
the
telling
floor.
them that you want, you
Anthony
may
has-
charge them up to 6%,
Anthony
but you
has the
don't know
floor.
what you're going to do with that money.
No,
You can't tell them, what are we going to do with it?
That is
You don't know.
not
Thank you, Mayor.
You're out of order.
So, to Al's point, well, Councilman Pablo, you were saying that when we had the people over from that one section of town that we were gonna...
Yeah.
Right, but that wasn't looking at a $62,000 bill, right? That was democracy, but there wasn't the price tag hanging over our head whether we did this or that. It is a little steep. However, and you guys are very smart, you know what you're talking about, and like I said, I'm a business owner too, and we do have to start somewhere. But that analogy I don't think is accurate, because again, not price tag hanging on there. And as a business owner, when my customer comes to me, they want results, they want a cure to a problem, and they want it definitively, and if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, I'm out. I kind of agree with Al that way. There's a lot of...
No,
I want to do something, you know, like that,
ask
but...
them what they would want.
Well,
what they would want themselves.
We already paid you to hold the final community meeting, so
Yeah.
of course we're going to have
And
it.
to that point, it doesn't cost anything, we should. I agree with that.
Why not have the next
Councilman
meeting and say
Pablo.
we're thinking about doing
All right,
this?
that's
I mean,
what we're
ask
gonna
them
do.
what they would want you to do with that money. Ask them. Let them tell you.
But to Vito's point, do they understand, do they have an understanding as to what the potential benefits they can get? That's what Councilman Acroferri is talking about. Do they know things that there could be facade grants and sign grants? We're talking about parking, we're talking about, could we give them that kind of,
At the last community meeting, those were the kinds of examples I gave them.
but what did they tell you back?
And then they came back, and several of you were there, and they gave us their suggestions about business recruitment, about zoning. If I remember, there was an Indian gentleman there who said, I've got zoning issues. How do I go about doing this? He got the question, and he came back with his own question. Can this help me do that? And the answer was yes, it can.
But if the zoning can be simple, he can come here one night and we might be able to make a zoning change, if it's a simple zoning change. I mean, I don't know whether you need to sit, I think some of the objectives of the SID might be things we want to pursue. Whether it has to be through a SID, I don't know. But, I mean, you just can't ask an open-ended question, what do you want from the SID? I don't know if, like Peter was saying, I don't know if a business owner would know exactly what he needs.
Let's open to the public, because Mr. Grasso is here and he was at the meeting, and he could give us his, he could tell us what his experience was when he went to the meeting, and what he understood and what he left with, if I could be so bold as to ask him.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Have a meeting where three of us couldn't beat it.
Yeah, I would say. But I still think this is better than nothing. And it doesn't cost us a penny.
Just give us your name and address.
My name is Lou Grasso. I live at 172 Lozier Terrace, and I'm the owner of the property at 846 Kinnickinnick Road.
Lou, you went to the community business meeting. You saw Mr. Gordon and Mr. Smart there. I was there. What was your, Kathleen was there, Ellen was there. What was your sense when you...
Very good.
Right,
Good
so
for you.
I was there, thank you.
Good.
You weren't.
I thought the meeting was interesting. It was an interesting point, what he just brought up about the gentleman that was there, that's the owner of the property that previously had Sanducci's in it. I think that's what he's discussing, about that gentleman was interested in a zoning change because he has a second floor that he's having a lot of difficulty rent, and he would be interested in, you know, if it could be changed where there'd be residential on the second floor. And as I mentioned at the meeting, I think that would be a big plus, because there's a lot of second floor offices I've seen on Kinnickinnick Road that are very, very difficult to rent. I mean, I don't have any, but they do exist. And in the general investment community, I think if there were second floor residential that was permitted on Kinnickinnick Road, you'd have a better chance of just everything thriving more. I mean, people that would want to build buildings and everything else, at this point, if they want to build a building and they know the second floor can only be office space, it really inhibits it quite a bit. If there was residential allowed, I think that would just bring more money from the investment community in. I mean, the other thing I think about the parking on the entire Kindercamack Road, my feeling is that if there was better parking on the entire strip, River Edge is a fairly wealthy community and surrounded by wealthy communities. So if there was parking, business owners and chains and corporations and everything would see that there's an area that's a wealthy area and has parking, and they would come. That would be it. It wouldn't, it would be like automatic. Like if you see, you see areas on Cedar Lane in Teaneck that have lots of municipal parking, and you have, a lot of big stores there, a lot of mom and pop stores, but you have CVS's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and everything. The parking on the whole street. I mean, I was just saying from my end, the whole street is key to, nothing is ever going to move without the parking. I mean, the only place I can actually think of that happens is Manhattan, where everyone's a pedestrian. But short of that, if the area doesn't have parking, nothing's ever going to happen.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Grasso, but if there was say a 4% assessment on top of your property taxes to fund a SID or a bid in which the business community had a voice for zoning changes and for increased parking, would that be cost prohibitive to you as a property owner?
No, I would not object to that.
Okay. Ellen?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why did you come to the meeting? You were one of 8 people. Why did you come? And why do you think your fellow business people didn't come? And what can we do to encourage them to come to a meeting in January?
Well, I think, to answer the second part of your question, what Mr. Papaleo said is, if you said that there's going to be the possibility of a 0 to 6% increase in property tax or assessment or whatever else, that's, a buzzword everybody. Taxes, that's going to wake people up. So if that was in some type of flyer and that was delivered to every property owner and possibly business owner, because if certain business owners, pay their portion of the property tax, but even if they don't own the property, that would definitely get people to the meeting. When it's just open-ended, like here, we're going to try and improve things and do this, nobody really is going to come. Why I came? Because I'm interested in having things improved. I've had I have one empty store, and I've had potential tenants to come look at it. Some of them I've met there, and they're just, I feel like uneasy, because at what point in the conversation are you going to ask me, well, how's the parking here? I just know it's coming. And then the other thing is, I've even had, some of my existing tenants there, and I spoke to potential tenants on the telephone, and, I called them back, we're supposed to meet or whatever, let me drive by first. Call them, obviously they have caller ID, they see my number, they don't answer, and the other tenants, oh yeah, I had people look and they were asking me, well, how is the parking around here? It's an ongoing battle. And, there's so much more to the business community. If there was parking, it would be much more of a community where people could go, there'd be cafes, people could meet, townspeople could get together, and it's not just strictly an issue of, certain businesses need parking. It's make it much more community-minded. The other thing I have in the back of my mind, as far as, I don't know the actual logistics of it, how the town could get money, but there's one thing as far as the business district, there seems to be like a divide between residential and business in most towns, but the point should be brought up that the towns that do have a commercial district that thrives and possibly has higher density, being able to get more property taxes, it benefits the residents. The prime example that comes to mind is Paramus. Look at their residential property taxes, and it's because of the commercial.
Right.
So,
Mr. Grasso, this parking, where do you think it should be?
well, the parking lots, the first thing that comes to mind obviously is the area in Grove Street. That's borough-owned property, and the 6 or 7 spaces that are on Kindercamack Road, in between Lincoln and Washington, that could be opened up to have like 40 or something spaces if there's some type of, retaining wall or pillars or something like that. As far as further down, I don't know if there's any land or something near the strip of stores that's south of the diner, because even though they have a parking lot in front of the entire building, that parking on Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, you really can't find a space there that easily, even though it looks like there's a lot of parking.
And I apologize for making you our business expert, but that seems to be the role that you've been thrust into. Parking where Verizon has been suggested tonight. That's across from Ace on the Oradell border. Would you think that that would be viable parking? Would that help your business, having people have to walk? I'm guessing, Mr. Smart, that's where you're suggesting the Verizon building is it's almost on the border with,
I haven't suggested
with Oradell.
the use of parking. It could be for business owners, it could be for employees, it could be for overnight residential parking if it was needed. I mean, those are answers that have to be sorted out among possible alternatives. I haven't suggested it as particularly suitable for customer parking.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought that was part of that 62,500. Was that parking area as well?
It is.
Okay. Would that help you at all? Would you think put employees or you personally? I mean, your shops are probably not.
Because I mean, it's a little bit too far away.
Okay. And the costs that we received from Mr. Costa for Grove Street were in excess of 300 and I don't know, what were they? They were excessive.
The high end was 300.
About 300,000. So at best, it would take a year and a half of SID money to just start to pay for that cost.
300,000 to make grade level parking at Kindercamack?
No,
that would be probably much more. That would just be below level Grove Street parking.
Again, I think you made an assumption that is certainly one of many assumptions, but to assume that the SID would pay for that in one fell swoop is not necessarily an assumption that you can make. You can provide for financing through the municipality with a guarantee from the SID that could take place a 7-year period of time at reduced rates. You could also, depending on the use of the lot, you could also perhaps invite county funding to assist you. So again, you made an assumption, Councilman, that's certainly one of many assumptions, but only one.
I'm happy to hear different ideas because before kind of left out in the wilderness. But so what you're looking for though would be grade level parking on Grove. You think would be the ultimate
on Kindercamack.
help.
I mean, the 6 spaces that are there just extend them
and go out.
I mean, to me, that's what's going to work. I mean,
and that's what you would need.
Right. That's what.
I don't mean to put you on the spot either, but what about redeveloping behind your property also? If the borough gave you access from Kindercamack Road, you'd be able to develop behind your building also. Wouldn't that be able to have some parking back there also?
If there was access from...
No, say from Kindercamack. Again, you're talking about grade changes and all that, but if you're able to say come in through where those existing parking spaces are, but to go behind your building there and build parking there,
that would help. I guess if it's... I'm not sure I follow you 100%. I mean, I know basic, from what I've seen in other towns, the typical shopper is, I can't imagine wanting to, walk up 15 steps or whatever to park. They're going to want to park.
Yes, but I said, but you do have vacant property behind your, like we talk about the easement that you need to get to your property through Grove Street. So I'm saying, but if you were to develop that, whether it's privately or public-private or part of a SID, that'd be something you would...
Yes, I mean, I don't have a lot of vacant property. I mean, the long, where we're referring to the easement, it's not
even tell, but the
it's a 10-foot wide strip that's about 80 or 90 feet long. That's not, most of the property back there is borough property, and then there's a lot that's behind mine, the lot that it's spoken about with where the house, I think, had burned down, there's a swimming pool. That's, I mean, a lot that
and then just one general question for you, and then I'll let you go. I don't need to grill you, but even though we're talking of potentially, say, $200,000 in SID money a year, whatever, I think, at least my feeling, that would be a little high. I got the sense from Council Pepperle it would be a little high. Let's go midpoint, 150, whatever, and I'm assuming there's going to be a 30-40% administrative cost that comes out of that, so we're dealing with maybe a net $100,000, which may sound like a lot of money, but it's not. How do you feel consensus will be made when you have very competing interests? I said, you folks want the parking up there.
Right.
And suppose now the SID says, okay, well, that's all due, we understand that, Mr. Grasso, but we really need to do XYZ down in this part of town, and in 3 years, we'll get around to doing the parking. I said, I'm playing devil's advocate, Mr. Smart. I'm not, and you're going to say we can do it all the time, but the problem is we don't have bottomless pockets in this town either.
You don't.
And even
you're also using strategies that there are alternatives to them. For instance, again, with a 7-year bonding capacity and debt capacity, you could take that theoretical $100,000 and do multiple projects for it, so that the solution that you just offered is the solution that kind of puts everybody
But again,
in the saying we can only help you.
we're living on a $14-something million budget with a 2% cap on expenditures.
Which don't apply to the special improvement district
Yes,
assessment.
but then you're talking about adding another burden to the rest of the
If it's
taxpayers.
a burden, you just heard this gentleman
No, I
say
said to
4%.
the rest of the taxpayers who have to fund that debt.
No, this is a debt that could be assumed by the city.
But now, if we have to bond the money, it has to come from the taxpayers.
No, it doesn't. It can come from the assessment, Councilman. We've done it in Fairlawn, we've done it in Cranford. So again, it's a matter of the priorities, which quite frankly, rather than leave this gentleman on the hot seat, if you create a special improvement district with a nonprofit corporation, people buy business leaders like him, they will, with your own professionals and others, be able to come up with a multi-tiered strategy and a multi-year strategy with a financing plan that can handle multiple priorities. Not a lot, but maybe a parking lot this year, maybe a branding campaign this year, maybe a sign and facade grant. Again, I'm not sure what your priorities would be, but you may be able to fund 2 or 3 or 4 important programs each year for a period of 3 to 5 years. You don't know the answer to that yet. However, with the SID, you can create an organization that can bring the business experience and leadership that your business community may have and may want to invest in helping you create a strategic plan. That includes a financing component. You don't have to do it all yourselves, and you don't have to do it at this roundtable. You can have this group work with assistance, absolutely, but also come back and work with you. Neither he nor you have to come up with just one answer. That's what other communities have discovered. And if you allow this next conversation to go forward, then I would certainly take the guidance offered here that says, we're considering this. So come out and tell us now, if we do it, what would you like us to spend it for? Or tell us not to do it. We're ready and willing to listen to you. And then challenge them to give you the specifics that they want you to address. Don't ask them how they expect you to do it. They're not the professionals. They also don't have the experience. He can't plan where to put parking. But if he says, I need parking, that's something that you and a board with a little bit of funding could address. Give them the shot to tell you and give councilmen the kind of details that you're looking for. Let them tell you what their shopping list is.
I think there is a
Thank you,
lot of
Mr.
faith
Grasso.
in that statement, but
Okay,
Motion to close.
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, thank you, Don, thank you, Mark. We're looking forward to having the next meeting, and we can work on the invitation together.
And the agenda, and again, having it at a regular council meeting will allow all of you to be in attendance. And there may be a real benefit to your holding it here. Well, they know you're serious
Yeah, and, you know, given the attendance at the last, the first meeting that we had, I'm sure that if, 4 or 5 times as many people showed up, if we had 50 of the business and property owners in attendance, we'd have room to fit them.
Well, we thank you for your time. Enjoy. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call. Be glad to talk with any of you, new to council or leaving council. We'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, and have a good holiday.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Did you sign the voucher in? Okay. Is there any new business?
I would like to, the council would recommend adding Michael Gensch of 65 Spring Valley Road to the Citizens Budget Committee.
What's the last name?
Gensch, G-I-N-C-H.
He's on the Historic Commission.
Yes. He expressed interest in being on the Budget Committee.
16 what?
65 Spring Valley Avenue.
Is there any limit to how many people can attend, or it's
I don't think so.
second?
There is, but there would be under, this would be under, we're still under the limit.
How many are we under?
I have to go get the budget manual, which was passed.
I think it's quite a few.
If we want more, we'll get more. Yeah. I know Mr. Clement left something on it. So.
Yeah.
All right, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Any old business?
I do have just one little comment for new business. While I was at the League of Municipalities meeting, I did come in contact with an IT person, and I reached out to them. We're going to line up at least 3 or 4 IT professionals to come in and give presentations about the needs of the borough.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso and I were having a conversation before council about the steps that lead to the Grove Street parking. We both expressed a concern that there is still open access to those steps. We may want to send our DPW superintendent or some delegate of his to determine whether those steps should be closed off. Mr. Grasso expressed concern, and when I was there, I thought that they could be unsafe.
Yeah, but
and right now they're open access.
I understand. The question is, I believe that those steps are Mr. Grasso's steps.
Yeah, I don't think there are.
Mr. Grasso said, and we can ask him again, but in the conversation I had with him, that his survey suggests that part of the steps are his and part of the steps are on our property. I don't know if we want to open again for Mr. Grasso to address that. Perhaps we can just look into that and deal with that at a future meeting.
Yeah, in the meantime, I think Mr. Grasso should make sure that there's a yellow caution tape or something around those steps. If the steps are shared by the borough and Mr. Grasso, at some point in the future, maybe Mr. Grasso would provide an additional easement, and then we could have those steps, we could, secure funding to have those steps, have new steps, put into another phase for Grove Street.
I also spoke to Mr. Grasso about that too. He said that he would be open to discussing that point. I just want to make sure that if these are shared with the municipality, that we are not putting ourselves in creating a liability if they are not safe. But if you are convinced, and if our DPW superintendent is convinced, and that the steps are solely Mr. Grasso's, then that is not our jurisdiction. But
well, I don't know. I'm going to leave that up to I'll leave it up to Mr. Sarlo and Mr. Costa, the borough engineer, to decide if
need a survey.
Yeah. Decide if the steps, if any portion of the steps belongs around borough property.
Okay, that would be great. I just think for safety's sake, that's something we should look into.
Okay, can I have...
Did we do unfinished already?
Unfinished.
I had a question about the easement. Is there any news about the easement? on your...
I gave the information to my attorney, and I haven't received any information back. One point you did mention was about the steps. That's the only, at this point, the only access to Kinnickinnick Road from this parking. There would be potential liabilities.
You'll let us know as soon as you hear. I want you to put on...
You know what? If I was a property owner and I had those steps and they were in that shape, I would just tear them down. Because it's almost an attractive nuisance to have that set of stairs there and to give somebody who parks their car on Grove Street, who's tempted to try to...
like a mountain goat.
Walk up them. That's like the stairway to heaven.
It just might be, Mayor.
Yeah, so,
I'll be there tomorrow.
either removing them or, I mean, even removing them, if it's, I mean, that area to get from down there to Kinnickinnick Road, even if the steps are gone, you could really have people that are tempted to climb a hill.
Climb the hill?
Well, if there were no steps
Oh,
there,
God.
it'd be a hill to walk up. I mean, I think possibly blocking them off, so there's no way
A
to...
repeller.
We're good with boulders. I mean, we could put a boulder there. We could have the DPW guy put a...
We must have a stockpile of boulders that we just shift around.
We do, we have boulders. We won't put the boulder at the top because it might roll down. We'll put the boulder at the bottom.
Walker beware.
Might be an idea.
I also wanted to ask about the utility audit. Can we keep that on the unfinished business list until we have a response?
There was a partial response in our correspondence indicating that we were, and I think Alan spoke about it at the last meeting, they requested our November telephone billing and indicated that they were finalizing the amount of our credit for the telephone audits.
I just want to keep it on there so we can stay on top of it. Also, Fifth Avenue.
I'd like 4 votes to put it on the agenda, not
What?
just a suggestion. I'd like 4 votes.
What on the agenda?
To put something on the
I'll
work session, you know.
I'll second
Let's
it.
have a majority.
On what issue?
Track.
On what issue?
Utility audit.
Oh, the utility audit.
We need 4 votes to put it on the agenda.
You made a motion?
Yeah.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now, Fifth Avenue, can we keep that on there until that's started and done? Do we need 4 votes for that?
It seems so.
No. Fifth Avenue
It's under capital.
went out to bid or something like
I
that.
know, but I'd like to keep on, take progress reports
The
about
capital,
it.
Mayor. Can be raised
Right.
anytime under the capital.
Under capital.
When are bids received on that? Alan, do you know?
No, we haven't finished the ordinance yet to create the funding for it.
Next
So,
meeting, right?
We'll be out over the winter.
So you're looking at a spring
It'll be a
project?
spring project.
Okay. What else? Anything else? Unfinished?
I have new business.
New business? We're going back to new business?
If we could, I'm sorry I missed it.
All right.
You need 4 votes, go back to it.
I was emailed by a resident, Francis Trapini, I believe it's pronounced, Trapini. She had received a letter from Americans for Prosperity Foundation. I had a long conversation with her, and she wanted me to do 2 things. She wanted me to bring this issue to the council. The council was aware of it, and she also asked me a question whether this was an appropriate use of Oprah records, specifically the voter registration records. And I said I didn't know that, but I would be glad to bring it to the council and ask our borough attorney if this is a matter that we should be concerned about or not, and that I would get back to her. So, Francis received a letter from Americans for Prosperity, and it's a brief letter, so with the council's indulgence, I'll just read it quickly. It has a notice number, it has a notice date of October 16th, it has her name, and but it was about the general election. It says, Francis, according to public records, you are one of the few individuals in your neighborhood that is not a regular voter. We are contacting your neighbors today to let folks know who does and doesn't vote. As you can see below, your neighbors who have voted in every election are concerned about our community's well-being. They are concerned about the future of America. And then it names her neighbors. And then it says, "We strongly encourage you to vote in the November election to improve your voting record. It's important, the right thing to do." They then direct her to electionsnewjersey.gov to find her polling station. And then it says, "P.S. After the election, we will reevaluate your voting record and hope to share it with your neighbors to see if there is an improvement." She was very upset about this, and she said she went and knocked on her neighbor's door and said, "Did you get this letter that said I don't vote well enough or to the same degree as you?" And all of her neighbors said yes. She felt that this was a form of intimidation. She wanted me to bring it to the council, and she wanted to know, is this something the council should be concerned about, and is this a misuse of public records?
It's not a misuse of public records. There's certainly election voting cycles and who votes is public record.
Okay.
How one uses them, a private entity, or public, how one uses them is their own choosing. Personally, yeah, it's a form of intimidation, but it's not something for the mayor and council to write a letter to go after American for Prosperity.
I had told her that was my understanding too, but she still asked me if I would bring it up, and I said I would absolutely do that. And now we are aware that this sort of thing is happening, so I just wanted to mention that.
Tom, do you know who is behind Americans for Prosperity?
I think I do, but I don't know that I would want to, in a public session, go in that direction. I was asked by a resident to do something, I did, I personally don't want to speculate on that, and I didn't research it because I didn't want to say, I think it's this group or that group or that group. I just had a resident who felt that she was being intimidated and wanted to know if there was anything we could do. I had told her I didn't think there was. I told her that I thought this fell within the Oprah expectations, but she expressed her deep concern, and I said,
You don't even need to file an Oprah to get that. I mean, those documents, you go right up to the county elections and get those documents.
Yes, and I've done that too, and I did tell her that, but I thought that it would fit under all the current laws regarding public records.
Does it advocate certain positions or certain candidates?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But she was upset, and I said I would do this, so I did. I said to her, I assume that that they looked at. No, I don't want to go there either.
Yeah.
I think it is what it is. I fulfilled my obligation to her, and I did validate her that what I had told her was correct.
You wanted to?
I had one other unfinished business. It's regarding tree stump grinding. I just got an email from Liz regarding it, and apparently the company that Downs, that you also, I believe, were informed, we should enter into the agreement with Hawthorne or Hallwood.
I'm sorry.
The stump grinding that
We had a bid with the Riverside Cooperative.
yeah, that's
with
the
Borough
that's what
Forward.
we should
We rejected that to go out and get other quotes along with another quote from Downs.
apparently now Downs saw that the other companies were charging higher, so now they've upped their amount.
So now we'd like
Now,
to go back to
yeah.
the cooperative.
Mhm.
Okay, I can look into that.
Okay, anything else? Can I have a motion to adjourn so we can go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Thank you. Okay.